Some of my earliest video games were on the Super Nintendo back in the 90s, and games were very different back then, mostly because of their hands-off approach. Instead of stopping all the time to tell you things like, this is how you move, that mean-looking guy that just hit you, that's a bad guy. This is called a health bar. You know, annoying stuff like that. Instead, you were led by more intuitive game design, or in some cases, it was just sink or swim. Not all the time though, some games were just confusing and difficult for no good reason. I'm not completely nostalgia blind. But those legendary older games, the ones you see hours-long retrospective videos about, they were very good at showing, but not telling. Some of my favorite games of all time I never even finished, because I just didn't know what the hell to do to progress. I'm not talking about games like Donkey Kong Country or Mega Man X. Those games were hard, sure, but by the sheer power of no responsibilities, I was able to make it through them. I'm talking Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire, you know, those old JRPGs. I just had no sense of direction back then and no patience to take notes. I eventually gave up on them, and it wasn't until I was much older that I was able to finally beat them. It sounds strange, but I kinda missed that feeling, the feeling of being lost. And lost doesn't necessarily mean being stuck. I don't miss endlessly running in circles. I miss getting around by pure memory, no objective markers guardrailing me to the main path, no icons all over the map. It felt like I was on my own personal journey. Never knowing what was around every corner, it felt immersive. Something I don't feel a lot of in newer RPGs because the whole experience can be guided from point A to point B. I've mentioned games like Elden Ring a lot on this channel and how I love when games strike that balance of feeling both old school and modern at the same time. So anyways, I was exploring Steam the other night, hoping to snag something during the winter sale. I've been trying to find more games like that, and I have found insanely good hidden gems in the past before they became popular. One of those games being Core Keeper a couple years ago. I think I might have found another one of those gems. A game called Drova, The Forsaken Kin, and I want to talk about it today because it nails that old school feeling I'm talking about. Looks can be deceiving. The screenshots, the trailers, it looked like your basic top-down action game. But the reviews, they were overwhelmingly positive. And the thing about me with indie games is that I always go in with lowered expectations. Like, this looks pretty cool, I say. Never expecting some random indie team I've never even heard of to have one of the best open world action RPGs that I've played in years. When I started this game, what I thought was only going to be a few hours ended up being an all-nighter. I was hooked. It was like 6 in the morning and my eyes were dry as hell. If this wasn't the weekend, I would have been at work zombied out of my mind. No AAA graphics, no giant open world, no cinematic cutscenes or anything like that. Yet this little indie game, or at least what I thought was little, ended up being more immersive and satisfying to play than most of the biggest blockbusters I've played all year. I'm in Act 3 or 4, I don't even remember, but I've read that Drova has 6 acts. I had this game for 2 days, and I'm 30 hours in. I sorely underestimated the scope here. Drova is an open-world top-down action RPG with pixel graphics. It's heavy on exploration and has tons of secrets and stuff to loot. I've been calling it the 2D Skyrim, but it kinda has a mix of The Witcher in it as well because of its atmosphere. You even have an investigation mode similar to Witcher Senses, where you can track footprints and sniff out hidden secrets. There's no weight management either, so you can channel your inner klepto till your heart's content. Don't get caught like me though, because these NPCs are not playing around. I accidentally stole from a merchant stall trying to initiate dialogue, and dude went demigod on my ass, unleashing all kinds of combos and abilities. He ended up chasing me out of town, which was hilarious. And the combat is challenging too. but also really methodical. There's a certain rhythm to your weapon swings, making them faster if you time them right. You have stamina, iframe dodges, heavy attacks, and all that, with each hit filling your focus gauge. Once you meet a certain threshold, you can pull off special abilities, and there's a lot of variety, making for loads of experimentation. It's a fun dance of watching for attack patterns and countering. It's not quite Dark Souls, but enemies will fuck you up if you try to get greedy or get outnumbered. There's no survival mechanics, no map markers, no hand holding at all really, just pure RPG. It's handcrafted, by the way, too, and most importantly, it respects you. None of those guardrails that I mentioned earlier. The amount of decisions you're given to how you want to approach this game is insane. You could help out the first village, get your bearings, progress in a more natural way, or you could go off and explore the entire map, visiting the various factions and picking up quests along the way. There's no level scaling and none of the enemies even respawn. That wild boar you defeated, it stays dead. The corpses will even be there when you return. They even start decomposing over time. This type of attention to detail is everywhere. If you do decide to carve your own path, you'll be surprised by how non-linear everything is. I ended up getting stuck on the main quest and decided to travel to the opposite side of the map, where I was able to side with a different faction, and the main quest actually picked up over there instead. It makes me wonder how differently things would have played out if I would have joined the Remnants instead of Nemeton. There's some pretty gray decisions too, because my decisions ended up getting a whole other faction wiped out. This is crazy considering I spent my first 12 hours as a homeless dude struggling to climb the ranks of society. I even slept in the poor districts alongside the beggars and thieves, afraid of getting robbed during the night. I worked the silver mines, even worked as a farmhand, saving up whatever scraps I could find to afford new equipment. Drova can be pretty brutal at times. You'll most likely get torn apart by a pack of wild dogs trying to explore off the beaten path. A random cave could get you mauled by a bear. And if you run into bandits on the road, just run the opposite direction. Trust me, these bastards beat me to the ground and picked my pockets. Which makes me dread an Iron Man run where I'm not allowed to save scum my way out of these situations. It kinda reminds me of another game I played a while back called Outward. Another brutal game where you start as a nobody character dropped into a hostile world. When I was finally able to afford a good weapon and a set of leather armor, it ended up feeling like a game changer. The description even read, "This is my first real armor." Little by little, my character was becoming stronger, allowing me to go back and clean up the areas I couldn't progress in before. Overcoming an enemy that wiped the floor with you the first time around is always satisfying, and it happens a lot. I'd say the power progression is one of the best aspects of Drova. This is not one of those games where you get a piece of gear that gives you point whatever additional damage. When you get a new weapon, you really feel it. It's the same when you unlock new talents and skills. You start the game being this weak-ass nobody and slowly become this mighty warrior, cutting down enemies left and right. And this slow burn progression feels so natural. Something I never really got from Skyrim because you literally fight a dragon in your first hour. The lore, it's pretty good. As soon as you start the game, you're given exposition on the world through an opening scene. It has this dark fantasy Celtic kind of vibe. The description says it marries dark grim tones of its genre with the mysticism of Celtic mythology. Encounter a society where ancient restless spirits and divided factions battle for dominance, uncover forgotten abilities, and unravel the secrets of the past shrouded in mystery. Most of the lore is in the many dialogues and interactions with the characters, and this mostly deals with current events. Other bits are discovered during exploration. You learn about a past civilization that lived in the world, what they did, and how it came to be. It's your typical chase the MacGuffin kind of plot, nothing crazy, but ends up feeling fresh because it's your choice to engage with it or not. So many game narratives can feel forced when they're constantly in your face, where a lot of AAA games tend to go for a more flashy, stimulating experience. Drova feels like more of a subtle, personal journey. And as I said before, there is no hand-holding, no map markers, no level scaling. You go around and just figure things out. The maps are literally maps, like on a piece of paper. You have a journal that updates as you progress in the quest lines, but it can be tedious if you don't remember where a quest giver is. I'd suggest buying maps and marking quest givers and points of interest. Don't do what I did and run in circles talking to every NPC twice because you forgot where the one was standing. Sometimes I'd make a short note in my phone of where I left off so I didn't come back confused. Yes, it's one of those types of hands-off experiences. And I know it's not going to be for everybody, but if you're tired of overly tutorialized, bloated, hand-holdy RPGs, Drova is well worth it. You want to play as a cold-blooded mercenary for hire? You can do that. You want to be a thief or an honorable knight? You can do that too. You can even be like me and spend your first 10 hours as a peasant dressed in rags, sleeping under the stars and scraping up coins by farming and mining ore. The story is just ambiguous enough not to force you into any one role like the hero of destiny or something like that. You simply exist in the same world as everyone else. I actually like the feeling of not being the main protagonist for once. Drova is good at letting you make choices. And that's something more and more RPGs are lacking. Without giant budgets and big marketing campaigns, a lot of indie games end up never gaining traction. A lot of the reason why indie games push the industry forward is because they have no choice but to innovate due to a competitive market, while the AAA market can afford to play things safe. The truth is, the constant stream of remakes, remasters, and sequels are what makes the big bucks, while truly new games stay hidden. Sure, companies like From Software buck the trend of sequelitis, but most top sellers end up being just more of the same. Sometimes, the best games don't have the most realistic graphics. And as I play Drova, I'm reminded of that.